My name is Eric Wolf, and I'm a senior data consultant with SDK Tek, based out of Edmonton. I also have with me Paul Bryden, our marketing director. Paul, as you've heard already, is on the call. He will be playing a moderator role today, handling the meeting logistics, including managing the questions coming in from the chat window. Today, we're going to take a look at Purview, including some of the reasoning and rationale why Purview is becoming very popular. I'll be walking through a handful of slides for hopefully the next 10 minutes or so, and I'm hoping to spend the remainder of the time executing a number of personas within a typical organization. So we'll play some role play in a little bit. So just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we get things kicked off. Regarding the slide deck, we'll share the slide deck with you after the presentation. Paul will ensure that everybody on the call has access to the presentation material. Secondly, if you've got questions during the presentation, please drop them into the chat window and we'll respond to you directly via email. As Paul will be monitoring the chat window throughout today's presentation, if there are any questions he can respond to, he may respond directly as well within the chat directly. Just before getting into Purview, I'll start by giving a really ultra brief introduction about the company. For those who are not familiar with SDK Tek, we are a boutique analytics consulting firm based out of Calgary with approximately 100 employees. We have a wide range of customers representing a very wide breadth of industries as well. We deploy modern data platforms by delivering robust solutions and also offer sustainment and operational support roles for previously delivered initiatives. So let's begin. Why are we interested in looking at Microsoft Purview and the features that it offers? I'd like to start by investigating the business drivers that are causing an ever-increasing need for modern data governance and data management best practices and strategies. What are the major hurdles and obstacles faced by enterprises preventing an evolution in data governance maturity? Businesses are almost always dealing with serious and significant challenges in their data analytics environments and overall data landscape. Any one of these issues listed here could potentially cause a failure to adopt data analytics programs, solutions, or products. Let's take a look at some of the areas as outlined in the slide. First, we'll take a quick look at data lexicon profile. When reviewing and discussing technical solutions, much of the inherent knowledge, business background, and context is not well understood. Much of this type of information is held within the experience of subject matter experts who are often specialists within specialized lines of business. Such information is not readily available and difficult to get a hold of, and may require valuable time to get these specialists to get answers to sometimes basic questions. For example, a term such as equipment may have a completely different context between the oil and gas sector and the medical sector. In one context, equipment may mean a mining truck, and in another, it could mean an MRI machine. Without clear and concise business glossary terms and definitions, sometimes incorrect assumptions are made, costing the organization time and wasting money. Looking at issues related to stakeholder trust. Support users often do not trust the data being presented to them, or at least are skeptical of the data. Business users leveraging reporting tools such as Power BI, Tableau, and similar tools may not trust reporting numbers as they don't understand where the single source of truth lies. They fail to understand the level of cleansing and transformation which has been undertaken in an effort to produce the numbers. Also, sometimes it is extremely problematic to obtain a global understanding of the complete range of data sources, either from Azure, other cloud environments such as Amazon Web Services, or on-premise applications or software as a service offerings. In addition, knowing where the organization's structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data lives is a very typically a difficult pursuit. Such a lack of knowledge can lead to incorrect tactics and strategies for data initiatives since only a piecemeal or patchwork vision is available, which can be somewhat error-prone. Oftentimes, there's unknown or at least a hazy picture of which assets are considered confidential, classified, restricted, or even which assets have personally identifiable information within the data landscape. The effort to determine which assets are meeting these criteria is significant and very time-consuming. Manual efforts are, again, often very error-prone and may not capture all the necessary assets of concern, which may inadvertently lead to data breaches if specific data assets are believed to be safe, whereas in reality, they're actually not safe. The data governance tool should also have a number of roles built around personas to ensure that users are only able to see assets that they are supposed to see. For example, a financial analyst might only be authorized to view assets within the finance space, but not see assets in either human resources, supply chain, or other operational lines of business. As a data producer, documentation is always a challenge. Where do you put the documentation? How do you keep it up to date? Who keeps it up to date? How do you disseminate documentation to data consumers needing to use these various types of assets? These are a few of the many questions here needing to be addressed, and there are certainly many others as well. In alignment with some of the data sensitivity context we've talked about just a little bit ago, a clear understanding of assets is necessary to minimize cybersecurity threats as well. Similarly, there is a need to align and comply with regulatory bodies, including governments, law enforcement agencies, and other similar organizations. Any delays in responding to a perceived or actual threat scenario can cause reputational damage and other punitive actions, which of course are highly undesirable outcomes. Now I'll take a few moments to look at and review some of the major features available within Purview and how they address the challenges I've just outlined. First of all, Purview has a large number of data connectors dealing with a myriad of different types of data sources. Registering new data sources into Purview is a very simple exercise. Data source scans are subsequently set up to execute the data discovery of assets from various sources and then ingest those into the Purview metadata repository. These scans can be set up in an automated fashion to run weekly, monthly, or even on demand as needed, depending on ad hoc workloads. From a catalog perspective, imagine being able to browse your data assets in a manner similar to Amazon or some other online web retailer. We'll see an example shortly in the demo, but you can enter your search terms and there's a list of suggestions to choose from. Additionally, filtering is available to further restrict the result set in a more manageable size until you see the exact assets that you were looking for. Purview offers a very wide range of curation options for further enriching the information available within an asset as well. You can add descriptions, glossary terms, classifications, owners, and experts, among other attribution, which is all available while reviewing a specific asset from a user perspective. Data lineage now also provides the end-to-end lineage for a specific asset. For example, if I need to change my methodology for ingesting content into my data lake, how many downstream analytics assets are impacted? So for example, are there facts, dimensions, additional semantic layers or reports that we need to consider as well? On the other hand, from working backwards, if I need to make a change to my Power BI report, which assets do I need to examine from the source? Purview also provides a built-in data estate overview as well. What this does is it provides some additional built-in background dashboards and dashboards to provide an executive status as to the level of adoption of the level of data governance within a program and what proportion of assets have been either curated, at least completely, or in some fashion, at least initiated. This provides some valuable visibility into the effectiveness of the Purview implementation and insight into how to improve adoption by using various strategies, using various stakeholders within the organization. Depending on the need as well, SDK is fully willing to support a further analysis of specific areas to identify opportunities to look at specific subject areas or to make sure that Purview is set up as quickly as possible so that the organization can gain valuable insight by immediately being able to use Purview. Even as powerful as Purview is, there are sometimes some scenarios where we just wish Purview can do a little bit more. The SDK Purview Manager solution provides a very powerful set of functionality used to augment existing out-of-the-box features. In addition, since we are using the Apache Atlas API, additional functions and features can be custom built to address specific use cases and scenarios tailored to unique and specialized business requirements. Just working very, very quickly here through some of the benefits of Purview Manager. SDK, again, as I mentioned, has used the Apache Atlas API to integrate some custom development into the existing Purview set of features. Some of the major items are listed here, but I'll just talk through a couple of them just quickly. So looking at configuration efficiency. So if we're looking at creating one or two data sources within the Purview UI, this typically is not a difficult exercise. However, if somebody was to request 100 or even 1,000 different types of data assets to be created, this becomes quickly overwhelming. Purview Manager delivers a data-driven approach to the creation of new objects, and the specifics of these objects are listed within a data source in SQL Server, such that API calls are used to instantly migrate those data sources into Purview metadata repository. This provides the ability to save lots of time and money because we're not manually having to create a whole bunch of different items. Along a similar line, if there's a need to move, update, or delete a large number of assets, a data-driven strategy for Purview makes quick work of these types of activities as well. Consider an example where you have a set of data domains which has been defined by your data governance team. These domains are represented via collections and have been created in a testing environment. When eventually deploying to production, you want to make sure that the same set of collections is identical to what was just tested. Because the same underlying data store collects all of the various types of configurations, using Purview Manager guarantees that these collections will be identical to what has been tested, and the risk of manual user error is greatly reduced, if not absolutely eliminated. Consider as well a potential disaster recovery scenario. What would happen if your organization lost its entire Purview account? How would you recover? Again, since all of the configurations for collections, data sources, and scans is saved in a metadata repository, once the account is created, it is a simple matter to rebuild these items and have your users browsing data assets in no time to where they were before. So just before we get into the demo, I'll just pause here and let you read some of the comments from a happy customer that we've had recently. And with that, I will begin now the Purview demonstration. Just bear with me. I'm just going to log into my Purview environment here. So when we open up Purview initially, it sort of displays itself as a standard sort of Azure resource. And so really, an Azure account is really just a different type of Azure resource. And so you can see it has a similar sort of look and feel. It has the common Azure sort of menus on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, we can see some of the portals that we have access to within Purview. For today's demonstration, we're going to take a look at quickly the classic view within the governance portal. So I'll begin by, again, logging in as myself. So once we get into the environment, this is sort of what it looks like. For the first persona, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend I'm a user who is needing to build a report. So say, for example, I'm like a Power BI developer or a data analyst who's needing to create a report based on sales, and I want to break down those sales by individual salespeople. So just as a bit of context here, the environment that I'm using today is obviously our SDK environment, so demo environment, and we're using the AdventureWorks database as sort of our primary tool or primary database of choice right now. So what I'm going to do here, just pretending again I'm a salesperson or a report developer, pardon me, I'm going to look at sales. So again, sort of similar to an online shopping experience, I have the ability to kind of search what I'm looking for. You can see here I've got over 200 different assets that might be of interest to me. You can kind of see here on the far right-hand side, these are the different types of assets that Purview will support. And so when I talk about an asset, I'm talking about any sort of item or object or representation of a data item within the landscape. So for example, that could be a Power BI report or a Power BI data set. It might mean a SQL Server table, a view, stored procedure, data lake folder, data lake resource. So pretty much anything that might represent a data asset. So again, this 200 number is looking a little large. What I'm going to do here is kind of filter that down a little bit further so that I get a little bit more of a realistic result set to look at. So what I'm going to do here is I've got a list of filters on the left-hand side, so I can see different types of assets. So in this example, you can see here, this is what I'm kind of looking at, but really what I'm interested in is just tables. And so when I look at tables, you'll see that my result set has gone from over 200 items to about 67. You'll see here that we have the possibility to look at certified items as well. And so say, for example, as you're going through, you may have an enterprise data warehouse or some other sort of centralized repository. If we have the ability to certify those, we have the endorsement that we can do that. So if I'm wanting to say, hey, these are sort of the data sets that we want to look at, this is what we're interested in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a look at salesperson. And so once I sort of zoom into the salesperson table, this is kind of what I see initially once I get into Purview. So once I see the overview page, there's a couple key things here I'm going to see. I'm going to see primarily here the asset description. And so if people are wanting to understand, what a sale is as far as their AdventureWorks goes, this is sort of the description that we're putting through. If they want to understand some of the classification information as well, this is sort of what we're looking at here. So for example, in this case, I've got a salesperson table, and obviously that person table may have PI information, so personally identifiable information, and also some areas that might be confidential as well. And so right away from a landscape perspective, we can kind of tag these classifications as being important to this asset. Moving over now to the right-hand side, we've got a couple other things that we can look at. We have a hierarchy here. So if we're looking to understand where that data is coming from, if I want to request access from a technical perspective, this is how the hierarchy looks like. So for example, I'm looking at the salesperson table. That salesperson table is within the schema. That schema is within obviously a database, and that database is within a server. And so if I'm in a position where I need to request access to that asset, I know exactly what asset I need to request access to, for example. Looking at the schema tab. So the schema tab provides a bit of a columnar depiction of the assets within that table. So obviously, in this case, these are the columns within that table. In this case, I've got 3 different assets, or pardon me, 3 different columns that might be, again, confidential. And so again, we can clean those up to say that those are confidential. From a lineage perspective, I have a very, very simple example here, but obviously it could be expanded further if we wanted to. We have the ability to browse on that salesperson, and then there's some sort of activity, and we might be landing that activity into a data lake, right? So as if you're looking at a sort of a larger perspective, this could obviously grow to be much, much larger. If I'm looking at a contact, and so if I'm wanting to say, hey, who do I reach out to ask about these types of assets? We have owners and experts, right? And so an expert is somebody who might know a lot of the technical background as to how that asset is built. The owner might be a business owner, like maybe a product owner or somebody similar who might provide authorization to that asset. And so if, as an example, I'm needing to request access, I could just simply send an email to Patrick, and Patrick's like, yeah, please go ahead and access that resource, right? So we know automatically who is owning that resource. Lastly, if we take a look at the related items, again, because we're looking at that salesperson table within this database, we have the ability now to understand all of the related assets within that database. And so again, I wanted to really call out the key feature here that you don't actually need access to the database physically. This provides a bit of an abstracted view of that database. So even if you don't have direct access, you can see exactly what content is within that table or within that database. Now what I want to do is just quickly go through another scenario where maybe I'm looking at the data administrator or maybe a data governance kind of role. And so if I'm looking at what we call our data map here, this is sort of the overall data map that we have available to us. And so I'll just kind of collapse this a little bit. So if I kind of zoom in, you'll see here that we've got a data map, which is sort of a representation of collections and data sources. And so In this case, I have my root collection, and I have a sub-collection underneath that. But also at the same level, I also have my data source as well, right? So this is something that's been registered previously, and I have the ability to look at that. If I start looking at the different sort of collections that sort of lie underneath that, I have some business data domains that I can look at. I have a landing zone, and then I have a Power BI landing zone as well. For the sake of this demo, I'm just going to quickly take a look at the business data domains. So if I look in the data domain for sales, for example, so you can see here we've got maybe sales, we've got some police data, we may have other lines of business or other activities that we're working through. I can drill into those. And so as an example, if I wanted to, I could take a look at my SQL database. If I go into view details, you can very quickly see again, I can see where that data source lines in that collection path. As well, I can see I have a scan. And so a scan is basically the process of reaching out to that data source, discovering what's available, ingesting that set of assets into the Purview repository, and then making sure that that's available to users. So in this case, I have 14 assets. Out of those 14, I've got 13 assets that have automatically been classified via some automatic classification rules that I've described. And we can also see the result of the scan as well. So as an example, if I have a scan, the scan again has gone against this database, and obviously it was successful and took about a minute and a half to run, give or take. So again, if I click that here, again, I see sort of a similar set of attribution. I can see how many assets were discovered, how many were classified, and finally, how many were ingested into the Purview environment. So moving on now, the last sort of persona I want to capture is maybe somebody coming in from even a CIO or a chief data officer sort of perspective. So we have the ability to kind of take a look at the data stewardship activities. And so what this really represents is a bit of a visualization into how our data stewardship processes are going. And so obviously, because we're within a dev environment, you can see that obviously the lion's share of my assets are not classified or curated. But if this was sort of a more realistic scenario, you would see that you'd want to be making sure that as we go through over time, that those metrics are increasing. And so if you're looking to understand your data catalog or your sort of data governance program, how it's progressing, this might provide a little bit of a reference point as to how you're doing. And so what I can do here is if I can click over into sales, you can see here within my sales collection, I've got 3 sub-collections, and then within that, I've got a number of assets, and then the relative metrics that are tied to those sub-collections as well. So again, providing just a little bit of a exposure into overall how your data governance program and data catalog adoption is progressing. So I'm going to leave it there for the demo so far. But what I want to kind of do is just to kind of wrap up is just provide a little bit of a, how do you, if you want to carry on with this, how do you do that? And so if you want to carry on, what we would recommend is there's a couple of links here on the bottom. The first link is to our Azure Marketplace. And so what that does is it actually puts you into the Microsoft Azure Marketplace website. We have a number of similar items that we've created there. And so if there's issue or if there's probably interest in using either Purview or some of the other features we have, feel free to access that. The more direct methodology is to use the book consultation link below. What that does is it actually sends a more direct sort of request for information to Paul. And what we can do is sort of contact you and to see how you want to proceed. What we would suggest is if you wanted to move through, what we would do is a half-day session. And what that session really represents is a more of a deeper dive demonstration as to what I provided. And so that would include, for example, our Purview Manager Accelerator and some other features that Purview provides. We'd also conduct a workshop session tailored to your organization to understand the unique situations and challenges probably faced by your individual organization. Obviously, every organization is slightly different, so we really want to understand, what is important to you and where your pain points are. And yeah, so that's about it. And so I know I started a few minutes late based on my technical issues, but I think we've pretty much wrapped it up almost on time. I'd really like to thank Paul for helping set this up, and certainly thank the crowd here for joining us. Again, if there's any questions that have come out, please make sure that you contact Paul or contact the web chat below. So otherwise, everybody has a great day. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to present to you today. Have a good day.
Thanks very much, Eric. If anyone does have any questions, I've dropped my email in the chat, and also a few links that Eric was talking about. So I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today. Have a wonderful Halloween, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
All right, we're all good?
You bet. Go ahead, Eric.
Brilliant. So again, apologies for the delay.